What is the way forward? To answer all these questions and more, we have with us Vinay Khattar, the Head of Research for Edelweiss Wealth Management. And joining him is Mr. Sahil Kapoor, the Chief Market Strategist for Edelweiss Research. Welcome, Sahil and Vinay. If you have any questions, do post them in the chat box and you shall be responded. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. This is Vinay Khattar. So, one of the biggest events of this century is playing out in front of our eyes. And I recollect a book that I read some time ago, which was by Nicholas Taleb, which spoke of Black Swan as an event. An event that's an outlier, that's completely unprecedented, and it has an extreme impact and can be explained only in hindsight. Currently, what's happening with COVID-19 exactly falls into that list, and the impact is unprecedented. But one of our view is this may not necessarily be so in a bad way. There is enough bad that is being that's being spoken of, but there are good things also which could come out of it. So let's just get straight to the big elephant in the room, which is COVID-19. Now, we've been tracking this pandemic right from early February, mid-February, or early February, when we saw things playing out in China in a pretty nasty way. And one of the metrics that we developed over a period of time was how many incremental new cases are getting added and how many people are getting cured. So a ratio of incremental people where there are recoveries and incremental people where there are incremental where there are new cases. We started seeing single digit numbers in February or from mid-January. This number globally has inched up significantly. And if I were to just look at last 10 days average, this is about 25% plus. And in last 3 to 4 days particularly, we are seeing this number headed upward of 30%. In fact, yesterday's number was close to about 43%. Now, our sense is, looking at Chinese data, that if this number touches 50% plus, a clear topping out pattern is seen in terms of spread of COVID virus. And this is an extremely important one, especially once we look at the history, where the spread, once it gets controlled, it leads to a clear topping out pattern. And as we saw in 1920s Spanish flu case, once the virus spread has topped out, the fall in cases is very, very rapid. In fact, in some of the states in United States, the peak number that was reported on virus spread to the economy of the state opening up completely, the difference was only 10 to 15 days. So the fall is as sharp as the way the rise is as far as this virus is concerned. Second good thing that's happening with COVID-19, and this is again recent data, that globally the testing is picking up in a very, very aggressive manner. There have been about 15 million tests which have been conducted till now, but the new highs have, in terms of number of cases, was reached on 4th of April, which is almost 12 days ago. So testing is increasing at a much higher pace, while the number of people who are found to be infected is not increasing at that pace, and that's a very, very good news. In case of India, we had a very benign start. Government was fairly proactive. We were post Nizamuddin instance. We began to double our cases in 4 days. But since last 10 days, this has kind of slowed down. So our last 10 days average is about 7-day doubling, which is a kind of a slowdown in terms of spread, though at the same time our testing is picking up very, very aggressively. We tested almost 26,000 people as of yesterday, as on yesterday. Second, our mortality rate is much lower than the global averages. We are at about 3.5%. Global average is between 6 to 7%. Mortality rates, the studies have shown, is a factor of two important things. One, the number of beds per thousand population. And second, percentage of population above 70. Now, we all know that India has a great demographic dividend and our population is much younger. So we are very, very favorably placed. And Government of India has ramped up the bed capacity very aggressively. As per government figures, this number is upward of 1 lakh beds at this point in time and expanding. So our sense is that India has been fairly preemptive with the lockdown and precautionary measures, and these are likely to keep the numbers limited in India. Now, when a pandemic like this breaks out, it has fairly serious economic repercussions, especially when it is leading to a complete shutdown of economic activity. There is a huge economic cost to be paid. Now, if you were to just do a back of the envelope simple calculations, India's GDP is about 200 odd lakh crores. With about a month or 35 odd days of lockdown, we will lose GDP production worth 17 lakh crores. We're just dividing this by 12, which is the number of months with the overall GDP. Over this 35-day span, the entire economic activity is not shut. We have utilities like power and water and others running, essential goods, food services, grocery services running, agriculture running, retail, FMCG. So those are still running. And there are other activities like manufacturing, real estate, beyond coal mining. So coal mining has been restarted by the government or is being allowed to happen because it's a critical component for power production. So some of those activities are completely shut down. Now, when you do the full-fledged weighted calculation for this, we assume that almost half the economy will be in action and about half of it will be out of action. So that could lead to an impact of about 7.5 to 8 lakh crore rupees. That's almost 4% of points of GDP, and it's a fairly large number. Now, so that is the kind of stimulus that the government may need to provide. Sahil will be speaking in a lot more detail in this in a few minutes time. But clearly there will be a lot of pressure on growth. If you were to look at Q1 FY19, India's total production, gross domestic product, the total value was about 49.3 lakh crore rupees. Now, by a very clear understanding, we know that this number is not going to get repeated in Q1 of FY20. We'll be significantly lower, which means we are looking at an appreciable degrowth in Q1 of FY20. There are various figures which are out, -6%, -7%, -4%, -8%. But at this point in time, with very little data, these estimates could be anywhere from reality. So we'll have to wait for some kind of data before we get to a surety in terms of what is the kind of degrowth we are looking at in Q1. Our sense is Q2 could be a normalization quarter, and then Q3, Q4 onwards, we could see a robust recovery playing out as the shutdown economy comes back with a vengeance and a lot of sectors start firing and the pent-up demand begins to accumulate. So that clearly indicates that there is a lot of opportunity beyond the first quarter. Now, the big debate which is happening is whether this recovery is going to be V-shaped, U-shaped, or L-shaped. We are fairly hopeful that this should be a V-shaped recovery, but it'll need a lot of policy action, both on the fiscal and the monetary side, which will be very critical. Now, I'll hand over to Sahil to take the rest of the presentation forward from this point, where he'll speak about the fiscal stimulus that could be required and what kind of policy action the government of India should take. Sahil, over to you.
Thank you, Vinay. So just to put the flow in context, as Vinay said that any type of recovery could happen, L or V-shaped. and we are quite hopeful that it will be a V-shaped recovery. But hope requires action, and we think that action has to come from two places. One is Government of India, and the other is Reserve Bank of India. So just to set thing into context, in 2008 and 9, when global financial crisis happened, India had a fiscal stimulus totaling about 3.5% of GDP. And so far, in the current coronavirus COVID-19 crisis, this number is just about 80 basis points or 0.8%. So there is a sharp contrast, as Vinay said, that we could lose between 7.5 to 8 lakh crores of GDP, which amounts to about 4% of GDP. So this has to be bridged, and this bridging will happen from government action, which is a fiscal stimulus. And this is one of the most important need of the hour, and it has to happen quickly. We feel that in the next few days or weeks, some announcement to this regard or a number of announcements could come in, which are very important. So if the government is able to make up about 4% of GDP in lost lockdown output through a fiscal stimulus, there is a possibility that gradually we'll have a recovery. And in some cases, in some sectors, that recovery could be very fast. It could take a V-shaped kind of a recovery that we spoke about earlier. So a strong fiscal impulse is very important, and that is the point number one that we should remember. The second lever is the monetary policy, which I said the RBI has to do a lot of heavy lifting as well. RBI has taken some steps when it came out with its policy on 28th March, and it provided rate cuts, which solved our real interest rate problem to some extent, but more is needed. RBI could come up and do more rate cuts. It also provided liquidity in terms of getting more money into the market through CRR cuts, infusing liquidity through LTRO. But one of the most important points that we feel is RBI could come and buy Government of India paper, and that will probably be a very, very important change in sentiment, change in the way that we are going to give fiscal stimulus. So this is nothing but monetization of government deficit. So if RBI comes and buys Government of India securities in the primary market, it will be a monetization, which is going to provide Government of India a huge amount of support in terms of giving a fiscal stimulus. So RBI, from being a lender of last resort, would actually come and become buyer of the first resort. So this is point number two, a very important point of RBI stepping in. So if both these measures materialize, we think in such a scenario, we'll have more faith than ever that there is going to be a V-shaped recovery. And monetary and fiscal stimulus, both together, can solve some structural issues in the economy. And those structural issues existing even before this coronavirus crisis began. So that is very, very important, which means that if we are able to provide these measures, the fiscal and monetary policy measures, we'll be able to solve a lot of problems. We had some critical issues which were plaguing India's economy, like credit crunch, lack of money supply, lack of investment, frictions, demon, GST. So all these scenarios were prevailing before the coronavirus began spreading. And COVID-19 is possibly going to be a blessing in disguise. If we get our fiscal and monetary policy right, then because of the crisis, we might have the reforms that were not happening earlier. And this could really help the economy recover quite quickly. There is a huge shift which possibly could happen across sector, which is a very, very important key takeaway that could happen. So before we talk about sectors, let me give you some analysis that we have done on NSE 500, which are non-BFSI companies. So as per our calculations, if the lockdown continues till June, April, May, June being a financial quarter, we will be down close to about 40% in terms of our top line, which is our revenue loss could be about 40%, which will turn out to be closer to 90,000 crores. However, in FY21, there will be a very strong recovery. Growth will also recover, and this will happen at a lower base. So later on, we'll have a recovery which will be very, very strong. Now coming to specific sectors and to specific markets, we feel these are the best times to create your buying list. Instead of creating panic or getting panicky about the markets, one should look forward to good quality stocks which are priced at reasonable valuations and have long-term horizon and have a long-term horizon about your investments. Look for stocks where there are no lost sales or probably the recovery is going to be very fast. And it is always best to invest in companies which are less leveraged. They have less debt on their books and they will be able to survive the crisis better and recover faster. Our sense is that companies which are bigger in size and scale and also have strong balance sheets, they will tend to recover strongly and they will be the first performers during the recovery phase. So let me tell you about some sectors that we think we should completely avoid as of now, which we feel that there is going to be more uncertainty for the next quarter. So aviation, hotels, multiplexes, real estate are the ones that we should right now avoid. There are other sectors that we could look forward to. And also we should probably avoid most of lower rated NBFCs, which are rated below AA rating or lower, and probably wholesale funded NBFCs, which are targeting development lower tier private banks. So this could be a rough avoid list, which for the next one quarter you could avoid and probably revisit later on. Sectors where we see opportunities, one is clearly the consumption sector, and where we feel that it will, the coronavirus is already having a meaningful impact on consumption, and you have to distinguish between two types of consumption. One is clearly the FMCG sector, which is the staples or non-discretionary. They are getting a lot of benefit because of inventory stocking. But the other part of consumption, which is discretionary consumption, it is getting hit quite badly. Both supply and demand are getting hit. And we feel some amount of opportunity could also come in this part of the market. So companies which are cash rich and their balance sheet can absorb fixed cost, for example, a Bata India or a Trent, and where competition is probably weaker and it is struggling for survival. For example, the companies which I just mentioned, they could take benefit in these sectors. Sectors where there is consolidation happening within the consumption story, or there are acquisition opportunities. For example, Astral Polytechnic again could be big beneficiaries. There is also a structural opportunity within this space, which will happen in shift of manufacturing to India, which probably we can play through Amber Enterprise. Lot of Chinese production is possibly going to move out of China to other different countries. And with India providing a 15% tax rate for new manufacturing, there will be a lot of opportunities in this space. And within this space, we think that Amber Enterprise could be a good opportunity to look at. In the banking sector, this needs to be played very, very carefully. Credit growth will be impacted and we are already seeing the numbers happening. And we also need to focus on better quality banks. The intensity of the slowdown is expected to vary. Worsening of asset quality is expected to be relatively lower for mortgage players, focused towards salaried segment, and for gold financiers. These two segments are most likely to get hit, but at a very small pace. On a positive note, most large non-banking financial companies, the larger NBFCs, are carrying enough liquidity. So we don't think their balance sheet will be stretched to a very, very extreme level. Of course, there will be some pressure, but they will be able to tide through the moratorium period, assuming low disbursements happen and there are minimal collections. So they will still be able to tide over this phase. The other part of the banking space, which we feel is important, is life insurance and non-insurance play. They again would be very, very interesting to look at. We've already seen life insurance and general insurance number picking up quite significantly. So these again are the two very, very important themes to look at. So within the financials, we feel sectors or stocks to look at are Kotak, HDFC Limited, HDFC Life, and these are, I think, the key players to look at in this segment. Another place where we feel that there is a lot of opportunities, pharmaceutical, because things are now changing globally. Coronavirus has allowed this sector to emerge as a strong contender to drive the next big leg of the rally. Largely, the sector did not perform for the last 3 to 5 years. Very few stocks were doing well. Domestically, also, we saw a lot of pressure on pharma companies. But in the last 1.5 months, they have started to perform very, very well. In the short term, most companies will bounce back from the last 5 years of underperformance. So you have to choose the stocks very, very carefully because right now 2 issues are getting resolved. One is that US FDA has started to tone down its impact or its measures on Indian companies, and some measures are getting relaxed. So that could be a very positive step. It played out negatively for pharma companies historically. Second, some companies which are India focused, they are seeing significant jump in sales. And with whole healthcare issue panning out, a mix of pharma and healthcare could be a very, very interesting opportunity. So we like players like Biocon and Ajanta Pharma in the pharma space. Last sector which we feel is very, very interesting and you should look out is specialty chemicals, because long-term benefits clearly outweigh the near-term challenges. So like pharma, this sector would also emerge as a gainer. In this sector, we prefer players which have niche chemical capabilities and are export focused in specialty chemical space. Back-to-back supply side issues which are emanated from Chinese chemical manufacturer. First, it was due to the enforcement of strict environmental regime there, and then due to current challenges because of coronavirus. These two will drive global players to de-risk their supply chains from China, and probably some of that de-risking will help India gain global footing. So few Indian players where we feel this opportunity could play out: Aarti Industries, PI Industries, SRF, and Navin Fluorine International. We feel they have already developed strong relationship with global chemical manufacturers and pharma and agrochemical innovators, and they are well placed to benefit from this trend. So these 4 companies we feel are they have existing contracts in place which are testament of their advanced capabilities in multi-stage chemical reaction processes. So these 4 players are going to be the key ones. Another sector is automobiles, which is seeing significant challenging times. It is going through one of the most challenging 2-year phase. It was already in a slowdown with significant drop in PV and two-wheeler sales already happening, and huge inventory getting absorbed over the last 3 to 6 months. Now we are seeing a lot of production delays and shutdowns happening. So automotive industry continues to be in flux, continue to be in a phase of flux. But we expect that extensive lockdown across the country, it will significantly impact the economic growth, and meaningful recovery, at least for auto in Q2, will not happen. It will probably happen later on. But we feel a key change which could occur for auto sector would be a change in investor or consumer sentiment towards owning automobiles. So right now, a large amount of market share was taken away because people started sharing their rides because of Ola and Uber coming in. Probably those trends could change, and going forward, a new trend could emerge for automobiles. But we feel that that opportunity could come in later on, and at least for this quarter, we could just keep an eye on auto and avoid it for now. So the last point in our webinar before we take up Q&A is how should you place your portfolio right now? What should be the strategy? So we feel that our take is very, very clear. Instead of looking for where the market is going to bottom or look for a nifty bottom, investors should deploy their capital in a staggered pattern. Look for to make significant long-term gains. So what you could do is probably deploy 5 to 7% of your investable surplus every week, and take this up to 30 to 40%, or maybe if you are very, very aggressive, to 45, 50%, and stop there before you take a relook at your portfolio. And we would advise that in the next 1 month, not looking at, let's say, an index Nifty level, but deploying this strategy of staggered purchases will be the most important prudent way to tackle the current market. So the take is very clear. Don't panic. B is go in a staggered manner and deploy a consistent amount over the next few weeks. So I think with this, I will end my speech here. Probably we'll now take up some question and answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sahil and Vinay. I think we will take in a few questions right now. The first question I would like to start with is I would like to ask Vinay, what are the factors that can play for India in a post-COVID world? Over to you, Vinay.
Thank you, Anaga. Thank you so much. So the post-COVID world could be very interesting, maybe appreciably different than the pre-COVID world. One thing which we clearly see playing out is a trend where globally companies will want to shift some degree of manufacturing out of China. We saw the massive shutdown in Wuhan preceded the shutdown of rest of the globe. That had significant impact on the manufacturing abilities. Wuhan was famous for their chemical production facilities and other continuous process industries. So the whole concept of dependence on China, which was already coming down, which was China plus one, could get further accentuated with COVID hitting the world. Second big thing that we see is down trading that would happen from the average consumer point of view. If people were willing to buy a 20-25 lakh rupee car, you could see that the borrowings would come down. People would want to downtrade to more safer bets of 10, 12, 13 lakh rupee cars. We see discretionary spend, which is for higher ticket items, getting impacted in a significant manner. So both on the luxury side as well as on the discretionary side, we see down ticket trends playing out. What is not going to be impacted are smaller discretionary items like shoes, and that's why Bata becomes very, very interesting bet for us. What is not going to get impacted is the staple, which is FMCG companies. Now, third thing we can probably see from the market point of view is that there could be sectoral shifts where the investors had a particular sector as a darling, and probably that sector could take a back seat now. If I were to just give you an example, banking and BFSI space had a Nifty weightage of close to 34-35%, which was the largest by margin for any sector. Now that could see a shift. Our sense is pharma has already begun to play out very, very vigorously. All pharma stocks have begun to do very well. And that's based on two factors. One is the sentimental factor of COVID and the drugs that are coming in. And the second and a far bigger one is probably US FDA loosening up its very, very tight regime that it was following for Indian companies. Given that India has provided hydroxychloroquine to US and there has been a favorable comment from US President. So Indian companies which were in kind of a very moribund scenario as far as US markets were concerned, and US was the dominant business for most of the Indian pharma companies, that could come back. So you find that sectoral shifts beginning to happen away from banking and financial space to a certain extent in pharma and probably even IT as the US economy recovers. So these are the things to which to my mind could be very interesting as far as the post-COVID-19 world is concerned. Anaga?
Thank you, Vinay. Thank you, Vinay. I'll go on to the second question now. What do you think of the oil price movement?
So oil has had a very, very interesting trajectory. If you look at, so let me just give you some broad numbers. Globally, we were producing close to about 100 million barrels of oil a day. That has now got impacted very significantly. Two reasons. One, the oil itself, the oil consumption itself was in a downtrend with two major factors playing out. So almost 66% of the world's oil is used in transportation, with electric vehicle and shared mobility as the two key trends which were playing out in the world in last few years. Oil prices were anyway under pressure. And then you had massive supply coming in from US shale reserves. Now the shale oil and shale gas was causing structural shift in the global supply chain, where US, which was the largest importer just about 10 years ago, had not only stopped importing, it was beginning to export in a meaningfully large manner, which was impacting the prices in a very, very significant way. And the third big factor was that Russia was not necessarily part of OPEC, which allowed Russians to continue to have the benefit of OPEC taking cuts and maintaining the higher prices, while Russians didn't have to take any cuts. Now, these three things were long-term trends which were playing out. In the COVID world, you've had the shock playing through the system very, very significantly, where the demand destruction has been huge. Some of it could be even permanent or may not be transitory, at least may take 2, 3, 4 years to come back. In that context, an oversupplied market, countries which were independent of OPEC, which was US first and now China, Russia has, sorry if I spoke China, then it's wrong. If Russia, along with OPEC, has now come together, and probably US would also fall in line, which means that the production cuts will have to be taken by almost everybody. That could stabilize to a certain degree the global supply in terms of oil. And then that could put a floor on the oil price. We see oil inching up in the post-COVID world once the world begins to open and stabilize more like $40 to $50, at least for the time being, before we get some new data, both in terms of demand as well as in terms of supply. So oil bottom is, to our mind, in place. And as the global scenario begins to open up and the manufacturing and the industry begins to pick up, oil could come back to a more stable range of $40 to $50. Thank you.
I have a question for Sahil now from Shrikant. He's asking that US and Japan companies have left China post COVID-19. Does this benefit India's GDP in future?
Sure. So I think probably there is an expectation that India will benefit from a move out of China, specifically in the manufacturing sector. A lot of companies, specifically Japanese companies, have started to receive government aid and government, narrative that they should be moving a part of their production out of China. And India has been touted as a destination where this production could move. We need to get our house in order. I think India needs to move very, very fast in terms of providing regulatory environment for these industries to set in. Secondly, we also already have a 15% tax rate for new manufacturing, which is again a positive. So I think India has some ingredients where global supply chain can come in, particularly in sectors like auto ancillaries, chemicals, pharma, and to some extent also that we've built capabilities in telecom equipment manufacturing. I think these 3-4 sectors could gain in addition to our old traditional sector of textile. So I think we have significant amount of areas and sectors where manufacturing could move in. Secondly, as Vinay said, another impact which is playing out possibly positively for India is from oil. So let's say a $10 fall in oil adds about 20 basis points to India's nominal GDP. So if you add all these factors together and look at India's stable macroeconomics on the external side, it does create a possibility that India could gain. The only problem is that historically we have not seen significant gains accruing towards India unless we do things which are required at a domestic level. So probably I think we should get all those things done very, very quickly. And one last point, we should move and very fast and get the FTAs done, the free trade agreement with, let's say, a Eurozone, which have been pending for a while. I think if we get those things in order, there is a good possibility that some amount of manufacturing and activity could shift towards India.
Thank you, Sahil.
And one subtle point which I wanted to make. I've got a lot of pointers saying that I'm operating for a car. I think this is my new meeting room, which is noiseless and very core. It's AC is on, so it feels good working from here.
Thank you, Sahil. I believe that we
Thanks.
were getting some sort of inputs over there.
Yeah, it's parked.
Now, a question for Vinay. We have a question somebody posted that what is the Nifty outlook for next month? I think this is a question on everybody's mind right now. So Vinay, over to you.
Guessing market in indices is a fairly tough game, Ananga. What could the Nifty outlook be, whether it is coming back to 10,000, 11,000, or is it headed back to 7,000? It's a fairly strong and a very prevalent guessing game. So just in terms of what our chartists feel that the market will become range bound for some time at the current levels. And probably you will have to wait to see where the next triggers are, whether that emerges from data, which is obviously going to be very negative, or markets will respond far more to international liquidity and inch higher. We must at this point in time realize very clearly that S&P is back to close to its all-time high levels. So that's one take. But the more important one here, which is very relevant from the investor's point of view, and as Sahil mentioned earlier in his comments, is looking at Nifty levels and investing in markets may not be a very prudent thing to do. Looking at strong balance sheets, strong business models, and looking at valuations could be a far better method to pick and choose stocks, irrespective of where the Nifty is. If the Nifty were to go back to 6,000 and you ended up buying stocks in a jiffy without prudence, you ended up buying levered balance sheets or business models which could come under stress in the current scenario of a COVID-19 outbreak, your stock could be under a lot of stress. At the same time, if you end up buying stocks where the balance sheet was very strong, the business, at least in the short term, is not getting impacted, let's say a chemical space, where we see that the impacts to be very transitory, if at all, and most of the industry could come back very vigorously, those stocks and companies will do very well. So focus beyond Nifty levels as a strategy for investing in stocks, and that could really help in making money.
Thank you so much, Vinay. I have another question for you very quickly. From Mohit, he is asking, what do you expect in terms of the first quarter balance sheet numbers of the companies which are losing out due to lockdown, and the market is further following after that?
So we've done, Mohit, some basic calculation for NSE 500, as we mentioned earlier. So our sense is that sales in the first quarter could be down anywhere between 35 to 40%. These are across the industries. When we speak to FMCG people, at this point in time, they are saying that they could be losing anywhere between 15 to 20% of degrowth in the month of March/April. There are big question marks. When does the lockdown open? And so on and so forth. And there are companies which are completely shut. There is huge amount of inventory which was lying with the distributors, and to a certain extent with the retail player, that inventories got consumed. So when these are all mathematical numbers where light would get thrown once economy starts opening up and companies start reporting numbers. But our broad sense is that revenue could see clearly a dip of about 35 to 40% in a blended manner across these 500 sample set that we have seen. The other interesting part is that costs will not come down in same proportion. So salary cuts could become a norm. If the jobs get saved, it will be good, but there will be obviously certain degree of pressure when there are no revenues. There is no way that you can pay salaries, interest will still have to be paid. So you don't see that number coming down in a meaningful manner. So the impact on profitability, which is profit after tax, could be very, very severe. 1 lakh crore of PAT for NSE 500 company could get reported close to 90,000 to 1 lakh crore of loss in Q1 FY20. So we are seeing a very remarkable and a deep impact for large number of companies, and that's one reason why you saw the market reaction the way it was. Markets tend to foretell what's going to be happening in the real economy, and they respond faster and in a much more quicker manner. And a 1 lakh crore profit turning to a 90,000 crore loss in Q1 FY20 is what our estimates are at this particular point in time, with very limited set of data points.
Thank you so much, Vinay. I have a question for Sahil now. Sahil, Subhash is asking, do you see India printing money, as it is very difficult for the fiscal stimulus now and we don't have much room?
So I think two clear points. One is that if you add up Government of India fiscal deficit at 3.5%, take off balance sheet activities of another 2.5-3%, add the state borrowing number of close to 3%, you get somewhere close to about 9% of overall borrowing number. So this is what is happening at the current juncture. And at this time, if you have to give a fiscal stimulus, it will be tough. So one of the things that government will have to do is go and do market borrowing. And if it resorts to a market borrowing of, let's say, 2.5 to 4% of GDP, which amounts to about 8 lakh crores, the number will be very, very large. So we've come out with a report yesterday, which says print, spend and communicate. And that report clearly illustrates that there is a room for RBI to come and monetize Government of India deficit, or which is akin to printing more money, which is the question which Subhash has asked. So we feel that it is an activity we can do right now. Our external position is strong. We have very strong FX reserves. Current account deficit is under control. And at the other end, we also have very low inflation and stable macroeconomic factors. And this is the apt time to do such an activity, because I think most of the peer set in the developed world, whether it is US, Italy, France, Eurozone as a whole, or Japan, all of them are resorting to some amount of money printing. So I think it's an apt time for India also to do some amount of money printing. Our estimates vary from 1.5 to 3 lakh crores, of which RBI can do. Our prescription is that RBI should probably come and monetize about 2.5 to 3 lakh crores of Government of India deficit. That will give Government of India a lot of ammunition to give a strong fiscal measure and probably create kind of a bridge for the landfill that coronavirus has created. So the economy will be able to tide through this tough path if this is done. So the answer is yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sahil. I just want to inform everybody that we are taking the last set of questions right now. I have the last question for Vinay. The question is it true that the rural economy is doing better than the urban? If so, why?
So at this point in time, that's a general conversation which is happening, that probably rural is doing far better than the urban. And one of the reasons is that urban centers are far easier to monitor in terms of a shutdown. There are lakhs and lakhs and probably crores of people staying in large metropolitan cities. There is a significant amount of police force, media presence, and so on. So when a lockdown gets enforced, its enforceability is relatively very high in highly densely populated areas like urban centers. So in that context, rural areas are difficult to police. They are far more distributed, and the economy is dependent in a very meaningful manner on agriculture. Now, agriculture as an activity has not been shut down by the government. The Kharif and the Rabi crops will happen at their point, and A lot of production will come into the market. Government is taking a lot of steps to ensure that. So a combinative effect of these 2 or 3 factors is causing at this point in time the trends to show that rural part of the economy in the country would do far better than the urban part in the near term. But the reverse could also be true once the economy begins to open up, because urban centers, the demand would come back with a vengeance, and it will shoot up significantly as the towns and metros open up and people come out to buy more, shop more, as the purchasing power in urban centers would be far, far higher than what it is in the rural side. So this is our broad take in terms of why rural today is doing better and what the future could hold.
Thank you so much, Vinay. I have a question. I have the last question of this webinar now for Sahil. There are a lot of people who are asking what is the impact gold will have, or the outlook on gold in general. We have a question from Shrikant. So if you could please help us with that.
Sure. So I think gold probably will benefit from 2 scenarios. One is that US Fed and US government both are trying to manufacture a steep decline in the dollar. They are trying to infuse huge amount of liquidity in the market. Dollar going up is quite negative for US economy. So they are trying to make sure that a huge amount of dollar surplus is created globally. I think that would be a good gold positive. Secondly, I think we've had a significantly deflationary decade over from 2010 to 2020. Probably, I think that could change with kind of fiscal and monetary support that we are seeing globally. And for that to happen, I think we will require demand to come back. So at present, what we are seeing is that investment demand for gold, which is significantly driven by Indian consumption investment demand, that is down because of the lockdown, but still gold prices have been able to go higher and they have been bid up. So I think one thing is quite clear, gold will enjoy a positive trend over the next few years. Short-term movement may vary because volatility is going to be very high, but I think in next 1 or 2 years, it does make a case to add maybe 5 to 7% of gold into your portfolio and continue to hold that amount, because it will continue to enjoy a positive trend over the next 2-3 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sahil. With that, we come to the end of the webinar. Thank you so much, Vinay sir and Sahil, for answering all the questions and putting all the attendees or all our investors and clients at ease. I'm pretty sure all your questions have been answered. This is it from us, from our end now. Stay safe and stay productive. Cheers, guys.